we found a secret PS5 feature. One of the PS5's biggest games just got a whole lot better. We've got some updates on Cyberpunk 2077, and how good is a $300 DualSense? And real quick before we get into these news stories, remember to subscribe and set your notifications to all. If you told me Rocket League was going to become one of the biggest games of all time when it released, I would have called you crazy. But I think the fact that they launched on PS Plus when the game came out was a super smart move, because now the studio Psyonix is owned by Epic Games. They've done a ton of huge updates, and the game is getting a whole lot better on the PS5. So the first thing you're going to be able to get, which I think you can download right now, is a Ratchet Clank pack that comes with cars and other accessories inspired by the game. They look pretty cool, but the best part of all is that they're free, and I think it's sweet that Rocket League is paying homage to PlayStation, because PlayStation is where Rocket League got its big start. The game is also getting an update to improve its graphics, so you're going to be able to run it at 4K 60 frames per second in its quality mode, and if you shift it over to performance mode, it'll run at 120 frames per second in 1512p, which is bizarre. I've never seen a game use that resolution before, but it's still better than 1080p, so I think that's a win if you have a 120 hertz monitor. And then there's also a PlayStation Plus pack coming to the game that has cosmetics and I think a car coming along with it. So yeah, they're paying homage again to the PlayStation Plus origins of Rocket League, which is cool. And then they've added in a few $5 starter packs that give you a bunch of extra stuff. So Rocket League is still big, it's getting even bigger, and if you've never tried it out before, now seems like a good time to check it out, because there's some free stuff coming to the game, and the graphics update sounds dope. It's crazy that this game started on PlayStation Plus, came out and cost money, and then Epic Games bought Psyonix and made the game free and basically relaunched it. So this version uses the season model that pretty much every other free-to-play multiplayer game uses, and they just started season 4. So if you want to get into some Rocket League, it's free to download. You get the Ratchet and Clank pack, you get these brand new graphics updates, you've got these starter packs with cosmetics and stuff. Like, yeah, I feel like it's time to jump in. So as time goes on, everyone's kind of wondering what's going on with Cyberpunk 2077, because when the game launched, it was obviously super rocky, and they basically only update it when there's an earnings call coming up for CD Projekt Red, so they can say, yeah, we recently patched Cyberpunk and now it's looking just a little bit better. And ironically, that's happening right now with patch 1.3, which has a few new features, some of the free DLC that was promised when the game came out, and I guarantee a whole bunch of bug fixes. But the story of Cyberpunk is absolutely bizarre, because even though it launched so rocky, it seemed like a month ago when it came back to the PS5 store, people were really excited to play it because it shot up to the top downloaded spot on the list. But now, a whole month later, it has vanished completely from the list of top downloaded games, which is kind of weird. Now, to be fair, it seems like what they're doing is holding back a lot of the biggest updates to the game that people really want, like being able to change V's facial appearance, for example, or having cops that put out warrants and stuff like that that they said was going to be in the game but wasn't there when the game launched, for when the game comes to PS5 and Xbox Series X natively, which should be happening towards the end of this year. Honestly, I think that's the smartest move here. They got it running about as good as they can on the PS4 and PS4 Pro, and I feel like when they re-release it on the PS5, they just treat it as a relaunch and abandon the Xbox One and PS4. I know that's going to be a little bit controversial, but it really seems like the thing that was holding this game back to begin with was the last generation of consoles and the fact that they launched it on those devices in the first place. So if they can eliminate all of that older tech that they have to support with this game, they can really blow it out and make it more like the game they promised would be there at launch that they messed up. Now, I'm not defending that at all. I think they should have figured all of this out before they released the game in the first place. But after playing through the story of Cyberpunk, I thought it was pretty good. I like the shooting in the game. I think as a world, Night City is a really cool map. So if they can improve it, I'd like to see what they can do. One of the silver linings to the fact that there aren't a lot of AAA games coming out this year is that people are turning their attention towards some of the best indie games around, which is great because Hades just came out on the PS5, and we got some interesting data that shows how people are buying it. So while on PS5, if you want a box copy, that's going to run you $30, and if you want a digital copy, it's going to be $25. We'll have the box copy link in the description. On Xbox, you can just download it and play it for free on Game Pass. Now, ever since Game Pass came out, Microsoft has said that it's actually driven sales of games. Like, the biggest example they use is this game Descenders, which people turn around and buy after playing it on Game Pass. But it doesn't look like that's what they're doing with Hades so far because 93% of the game sales have been on PS5 and PS4. When you hear that headline, it kind of sounds like people aren't buying the game on Xbox, which I guess is technically true, but people are definitely downloading it and playing it on Xbox. And there's been some really interesting points raised about how that translates into money for the developers. Like, you'd think that the lump sum they get to put the game on Game Pass would cover them, but then when you look at a game like Outriders, where the developers, People Can Fly Games, haven't seen a single cent from that game, even though Square Enix has been calling it a success, and they feel like it probably made its money back at this point. Their agreement was they would start getting royalties on the game once Square Enix recouped the budget, and they haven't seen a dime, like I just said. Considering how many copies Hades sold on PC and Nintendo Switch, I feel like that's a great bargaining chip for Supergiant Games to come back at Microsoft and say, yeah, you can put Hades on Game Pass, but you're gonna have to give us a whole lot of money. And then on the PlayStation side, the game's only 25 bucks, right? Like, it's not that big of a deal that this one's on Game Pass, because if you buy it on PlayStation, you have it forever, and it could be taken off of Game Pass at any moment. There's no like minimum time that a game can stay on there. And for a game this cheap, I'm not upset that I have to pay for it on PlayStation. A game where I would be upset is if I liked baseball and I had to buy MLB The Show on PlayStation and Xbox players got to play it for free with Game Pass, because that's like Sony punishing their users. Like, at the very least, they could have put it on PS Now, you know? So since we got into the beta for the new PS5 update that's hopefully coming soon, a lot of you guys have been leaving comments about two things. You want 1440p support and you want a web browser on your PS5. Now, I will admit, I've never really used web browsers on my consoles, but if I didn't have a laptop or a tablet or something bigger than a phone, I guess I could kind of see why people would want to access the web on their console. And since most people had the PS4 last generation and that console did have a web browser, I can see why most people are just assuming that the PS5 has one, even though it doesn't. And the reason it doesn't, I guarantee you, is because Sony is like very scared of being hacked. And if you have a web browser, that's like a gateway to the whole internet that people could use to hack your console. So I feel like Sony's like, yeah, we've done the data and the research and stuff like that, and we've realized that not that many people are using this feature, so we'll just quietly take it out. But as it turns out, there is a way to access the web browser on your PS5, and it's not that cumbersome. So one of the features that the share menu has on the PS5 is that you're able to log into Twitter and share screenshots and videos. But when you're logging into Twitter, that gives you access to the web browser. So if you really wanted to use your PS5's web browser, all you'd have to do is make a private Twitter account and tweet any link you want to go to from that account, and then go to this login screen, log into the account on your PS5, and then click away on whatever links you want. It's a little bit cumbersome. It's just not that cumbersome. Like, it's totally doable, and I feel like until Sony decides to just give in and give people what they want, which is a full dedicated web browser, it's honestly a pretty cool workaround, right? Like, if this is your only way to access the internet outside of a phone, which I don't know how many of you there are out there, this is like doable, and I think that's awesome. And this feature's been there since the console came out, and they haven't updated it to get rid of it or anything like that. So I feel like for at least the foreseeable future, this will be a good, reliable workaround. So you guys might remember a few videos ago, we talked about a Pro Controller for the PS5 that cost $300 that was being sold on Amazon from a company called Hex Gaming. Well, Hex actually saw the video and they reached out and asked us if we wanted to try out one of the controllers, and we said, hell yeah. So you can actually buy these pre-configured on Amazon, and we'll have them linked down in the description, and they have a bunch of different styles and stuff on the controller, but I went for one that I designed my own, and I went for this Miles Morales black and red look, and I think it came out really cool. And the customization, you could get pretty deep with it. Like, I got to pick the color of the back paddles, I got to pick the color of all the triggers, and I just made these triggers red and left these ones black. And then this bottom part I was able to color as well. At first glance, it really does look like an official DualSense controller, obviously, until you turn it over and see the back paddles, because you can't get an official back paddle for the DualSense just yet. But then the other big difference is these thumbsticks. So there is no option to just use the regular thumbsticks, which I don't like. I feel like I would have done that if I was given the option, because I just don't need this extra grip, and it makes it feel a little less premium, ironically. Like, I get why people like these thumbsticks, because I guess they keep your thumbs on the middle of the sticks, which makes it easier to aim in first-person shooters, but I've never had an issue with the regular DualSense thumbsticks, so I would have just gone with those. They did change out the PS button to be the Hex Gaming logo, and I feel like that's totally warranted, because I'd rather them do that than put like Hex Gaming in huge letters on the back or on the front, even like on the touchpad, that would be a little too much. So changing out the PS button, I feel like they're totally warranted there. What I don't like about this controller though is the price. This thing will run you anywhere from $200 all the way up to $300, depending on what you add to it. And I feel like I was pretty conservative. They have a back texture you can add. They have more premium prints that you can get on the controller. And I went with just like two-tone colors and the back paddles. That was all I really wanted. And honestly, again, I would have stripped it down even more if I had the option. Like, I get that the DualSense is a premium controller and that they cost like 70 bucks at the store, depending on which one you get. But man, 300 bucks is a little ridiculous, especially when you compare this to the Xbox Elite Controller V2, which only costs $180. And in the box with that one, you get the removable paddles, of which there are 4 compared to the 2 you get with this controller. And these paddles you can just buy yourself and put on your own DualSense. It's a little tricky to do, but you could theoretically do it if you wanted to. Like, I'm just gonna be real, I think the markup on this is insane, but the only reason it's that bad is because they're the only ones doing this. So it's like they were first to the table. They may as well make some of the money while they can, because I guarantee you Sony is going to figure out some way to either have their own Pro Controller or at the very least add the back paddles, or if they're really smart, they'll just give us the design lab and let us design them ourselves. Because the coolest thing about this controller is the fact that I was able to, you know, granularly pick what is what on here. I did the red triggers, I left the buttons black, and I made the front red, and I just got to pick that. That was pretty sweet. And this is just nitpicking at this point, but I would have loved the option to leave the symbols on the face buttons because, you know, I like those. That's like iconic to PlayStation because they've used the square, circle, cross, and triangle since the PlayStation 1 came out. So to wrap things up, what you're getting here is a premium controller that's about on par with what you get from Sony, and you also have these easily programmable back paddles. If you're really looking for a customized controller, I feel like this is your only option, and it's not like they're ripping you off in terms of quality. They're just charging a little too much for it. But again, we'll have them linked in the description on Amazon if you want to check one out for yourself. So now that we're almost a year into the PS5's life cycle, Sony's done actually a pretty good job of updating it in a timely manner and adding features that people really want. They added the ability to transfer PS4 games to external drives, and the new upcoming update adds a ton of features people really wanted, like vertical trophies and of course the SSD upgrade. But the one thing that they still really need to figure out on this console is some sort of backwards compatibility. The PS4 got ripped to shreds for not having any backwards compatibility with the PS3, and then it kind of got it with PS2 games that had trophies added in, but it never got any backwards compatibility with PS1 or PS3. And now the PS5 is in the exact same situation, but worse. You can only play PS5 and PS4 games on the console. And things just got really bad for Sony in the looks department, because now you can play PS1 games in 4K on your Xbox Series X, and it's actually very easy to do. Oh, and just to point it out, you can also do this on the Series S. So literally every single Xbox Series X and S can become a dev kit. You just have to make your account a developer account on the Microsoft Store, which only costs $20 if you're an individual. So a YouTuber called Modern Vintage Gamer figured out that once your Xbox is a developer Xbox, you can install an app called DuckStation on it that lets you play PS1 games in 4K. And they look and run very good. Like, I'm gonna go home after work today and I'm gonna make my console a dev console and install this so I can play the original Resident Evil in 4K. Now, Microsoft hasn't commented on this, and I don't know if there's really any way or reason for them to add an update to this developer mode that would block specific apps, because once your console's a dev console, I think it's actually like pretty open as to what you can install on it. You're taking your console's life in your own hands, because if you brick that bad boy, it's on you, right? Like, I feel like that would void the warranty. But just knowing that you can install a PS1 emulator, I feel like they're gonna crack this thing wide open with this developer mode and start adding stuff like a PS2 emulator or Dolphin to start running GameCube games. Like, this is a very powerful machine that could probably run pretty much any game out there. And just because the PS5 is basically the same parts-wise as the Xbox, I kind of wish Sony would introduce a feature like this where you can make your PS5 a dev kit and just do the same thing, because then Sony could say, hey, this emulator works great. We're gonna buy the technology off the people who made it and start putting these PS1 games back on the PlayStation Store. Because now that we know the Xbox can do this, there's no reason the PS5 shouldn't be able to as well. And really, besides the web browser and 1440p support, there's not really much Sony can add to the PS5 to make it that much better on the firmware side. So I feel like their next priority should be figuring out backwards compatibility anyway. We know there's an emulator for PS3 games on the PC that can run games like Uncharted really well. It's gotten really good. Like, for the past few years, it hasn't been the best emulator around. Like, it was actually very hard to get specific specific games running, but now they've kind of figured it out. So if people at home just working on an emulator for fun can figure out how to emulate PS3 games, Sony should just go to them or figure it out themselves. Like, I feel like they're running out of excuses. But yeah, between the Xbox Series X running PS1 games and of course the Steam Deck being just a PC that's a handheld so you can install whatever you want, the pressure's on Sony to try and at least figure something out for backwards compatibility. I want to play the Resistance series on my PS5. That's all I'm asking for. But yeah, guys, that's all the PlayStation news I have for you today. Make sure you let me know what you think of it all down in the comments below. And remember, if you want to stay PS ready, subscribe and set your notifications to all. As always, guys, my name is Jimmy Champagne, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching.